The colony repair bay was always full of noise, sparks, hissing steam, and the clang of metal echoed from morning until late night. Workers moved in and out, fixing old ships and welding broken frames. In this busy place, no one paid much attention. To a single worker with a hood pulled low over her head, she kept to herself, quiet, moving quickly from one job to another. The human engineer, Daniel, first noticed her when she lifted a fuel pipe that was heavier than it looked. Most workers needed 2 people to carry it, but she moved it alone with surprising ease. Daniel frowned but said nothing. Maybe she was just stronger than she looked. Still, something about her didn't feel right. She never spoke much, just short words if someone gave her instructions. Her hands were always covered with gloves and no one had seen her face properly. Not even during meal breaks when she sat in the far corner, hood pulled forward, avoiding everyone's eyes. Daniel was not the type to judge quickly. He had worked with aliens of many kinds. Some were shy, some were strange, and some just wanted to stay invisible. But this worker carried herself differently. Her posture wasn't bent like a tired laborer. It was straight, almost proud, though she tried to hide it. One evening, when most workers left for the day, Daniel stayed behind to finish repairs on a transport shuttle. He thought he was alone until he heard the sound of heavy crates being shifted. Curious, he peeked around the corner and saw the hooded worker. She was alone, moving crates stacked with spare engines. Each crate weighed more than a human could handle, yet she moved them smoothly, as if weight meant nothing to her. Daniel's heart skipped. He had seen strong aliens before, but not like this. The way she moved was precise, like someone trained, not just a laborer working overtime. He quietly watched, careful not to make a sound. Then he noticed something else. With every movement, the lights above flickered faintly. The air felt charged, like the hum of energy before a storm. Tools lying nearby gave off tiny sparks as she passed them. It was subtle, but Daniel's trained eyes caught it. He whispered to himself, "What? Are you hiding?" The worker suddenly froze. Her hood tilted as if she sensed him. Daniel quickly ducked back behind the wall, holding his breath. After a moment, the sound of crates being moved stopped. Silence filled the repair bay. When Daniel looked again, she was gone. Not a sound, not a trace, just empty crates standing in neat rows. The next day, Daniel tried to keep busy with his work, but his eyes kept searching for her. She appeared like always, hood up, gloves on, silent. No one else seemed to notice her unusual presence. To them, she was just another worker. But Daniel couldn't forget what he had seen. During lunch break, he tried to approach her. He carried his tray and sat across from her table. She kept her head low, her hood shadowing her face. "Hey," Daniel said in a friendly tone. "I don't think we've spoken before." "I'm Daniel." She didn't look up. She just gave a small nod and replied in a soft, short voice. "Worker? That's not a name," Daniel said with a half smile, trying to ease the mood. "Where are you from?" She didn't answer. Instead, she quickly finished her food and stood up. She left without another word. Daniel sighed. Something about her made him restless. She wasn't just a shy worker. She was hiding something big. He could feel it in his bones. That night, unable to shake his curiosity, Daniel decided to follow her. When the day's work ended and the bay emptied, he stayed in the shadows. She moved quickly, heading not to the worker dorms, but deeper into the colony's storage tunnels. Daniel followed quietly, keeping his steps light. She carried a tool bag, but she didn't seem to be heading to fix anything. Instead, she stopped at an old storage chamber, one that hadn't been used in years. Through a crack in the wall, Daniel watched as she pulled off her gloves. Her hands glowed faintly, lines of light running across her skin like living circuits. She touched a broken generator and it roared to life. Energy surged through it as if new. She didn't repair it with tools. She repaired it with herself. Daniel gasped quietly, but it was enough. Her head turned sharply, the hood shifting slightly. For a split second, he saw glowing eyes beneath the shadow. She hissed a warning sound. "Leave." Daniel's heart raced. He backed away, but his mind was full of questions. Who was she? What was she hiding? Why pretend to be a simple worker when she carried such power? As he returned to his quarters, Daniel knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary alien laborer. The hooded girl was a mystery wrapped in danger, and he had just stepped into her secret world. And deep inside he realized something even more dangerous. He wanted to know more. The next morning, Daniel could not focus on his usual work. Every time he tried to fix a ship's panel or tighten a bolt, his mind returned to the memory of glowing lines running across the girl's hands. No ordinary worker could do what she had done. She was more than she pretended to be. The colony had always been a place of whispers. Strange things happened often when hundreds of humans and aliens lived side by side. But this was different. Daniel felt it in his chest like a weight. Something about the hooded worker was connected to something far larger. Later that day, the supervisors began complaining about unusual readings from the energy grid. "Power spikes near the docks again," one shouted. "If this keeps up, systems will overload." The men cursed the faulty wires, but Daniel froze. He remembered the sparks that danced when she passed, the flicker of the lights, the generator she revived with a single touch. His eyes followed her again. She worked quietly in the corner, pretending to sort through scrap metal. To the others, she was invisible, but Daniel could almost see the faint shimmer around her, like heat rising from sand on a summer day. During a cargo check, he moved closer. He pretended to inspect a shuttle's landing strut, but really he wanted to test something. As she walked by, the metal reader in his hand beeped wildly, though there was no reason for it. The reading shot up, then dropped as soon as she passed. Daniel's suspicion turned into certainty. The strange energy spikes in the colony were not from broken wires. They were from her. That evening, while most workers left, Daniel stayed behind again. He found her near the storage tunnels, carefully stacking old parts. She looked up when she sensed him, her hood tilting. "You follow me again," she said. Her voice low and almost mechanical. Daniel held up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quickly. I know you're not who you pretend to be." Her eyes flashed faintly beneath the hood. She stepped closer, her presence filling the small room like a wave of static. "Then you should stay away," she whispered. "Curiosity is dangerous." Daniel's heart pounded, but he didn't back down. "Dangerous for who? For me or for you?" Before she could answer, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the tunnels. 2 colony guards entered carrying scanners. "Power surge traced here," one said. "Search the area." The girl stiffened, her shoulders tensed under the cloak. Daniel could feel the tension in the air. If the guards scanned her, they would know she wasn't a worker. He had seconds to decide. Thinking fast, he stepped forward, blocking their line of sight. "Just me," Daniel said casually. "I stayed behind to finish repairs." The guards frowned. One lifted the scanner. It beeped, the reading unstable. The guard cursed. "The system's broken again." He shoved the scanner into his pack. "Nothing here but junk. Let's check the next sector." They marched away, boots echoing until the sound faded. Daniel turned back. The hooded girl's glowing eyes were fixed on him. She didn't speak, but he could see the question in her gaze. Why did he cover for her? "You're not safe," Daniel whispered. "If they find out, they won't just arrest you. I don't even want to imagine." Her voice trembled slightly for the first time. "I cannot leave, not yet." "Why?" Daniel asked. She shook her head and looked away. "Because if I leave, they will find me faster." The air between them felt heavy. Daniel wanted to push for answers, but he stopped himself. He could see the fear in her hidden face. For now, it was enough to know she was not what she seemed. The next few days only deepened the mystery. Power lines sparked whenever she walked by. Monitors flickered. Metal plates vibrated softly under her touch. Workers joked that the colony must be haunted. Daniel stayed quiet, his eyes always watching her. One night, unable to resist, Daniel checked the colony's data logs. The power surges matched her work shifts exactly. Every spike, every fluctuation, every single one led back to her, Then something happened that confirmed his fears. A small shuttle approached the colony, unidentified. It circled once, scanning the docks. Then it vanished into the black colony. Officials shrugged it off, calling it a lost merchant. But Daniel saw the worry in the girl's movements. She worked faster, kept her head lower. She knew something the others did not. When Daniel caught her alone again, he dared to whisper, "That ship wasn't lost, was it? They were looking for you." She didn't deny it. Her silence was the loudest answer of all. Daniel realized the truth was bigger than anything he imagined. The hooded worker was not just hiding her face. She was hiding from something out there, in the stars, and soon, the colony might be caught in the storm that followed her. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt fear not for himself, but for the secret stranger who carried power and danger beneath her hood. He knew this was only the beginning, and the signals around her were only warnings of what was coming. Next, the repair bay was louder than usual. Sparks lit the air, machines roared, and voices overlapped as workers hurried to finish their tasks before the weekly inspection. Daniel tried to keep his focus on fixing a damaged hull plate, but his eyes strayed again and again toward the hooded worker. She moved as always, quiet, fast, careful, but Daniel could see the tension in her body. Every step looked tighter, every movement sharper. Something had changed, Daniel thought. Maybe it was the shuttle that had circled the colony. Maybe it was the guards who almost caught her. Whatever it was, she looked like a shadow pressed too thin, ready to break. That afternoon, 2 colony officers entered the bay. Their boots struck the floor with authority. Every worker froze for a moment, whispering nervously. Inspections were rare, and when they came, they usually meant trouble. The taller officer raised his voice. "We have received reports of power disturbances. Someone here is interfering with the colony grid." His eyes scanned the room like cold steel. "Step forward if you know anything." No one moved. The hooded worker kept her head down, shoulders hunched, trying to disappear into the crowd. Daniel's stomach twisted. He knew. They were here for her. The officers pulled out scanning devices. Lights blinked across the bay as they swept the room. "Energy readings don't lie," one officer muttered. "We'll find the source." Daniel's heart raced. He knew she couldn't hide much longer. The scanners would expose her. He wanted to protect her. But how? His tools, his words, his body. Nothing could shield her from technology. The beeping grew louder as the officers moved closer to her workstation. Workers stepped back, not wanting trouble. The hooded girl's gloved hands clenched at her sides. Her body trembled like a storm trapped inside. The officer barked, "You, step forward." The girl did not move. The officer repeated louder, "Remove your hood." The bay went silent. Everyone stared, waiting. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. This was the moment. The one he had feared and yet expected. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she lifted her head. Her hood slipped back just enough for the light. To catch her face, a gasp rippled through the workers. Her eyes glowed faintly, silver and blue like molten metal. Her skin bore markings that shimmered faintly, lines of energy like living circuits running across her cheekbones and down her neck. The officer stiffened. His scanner beeped wildly, red lights flashing. "What are you?" he demanded. Her voice came steady now, stronger than ever. "Not what you think." Then, in one sudden motion, she pulled her hood completely back. Her full face was revealed, alien yet breathtaking. Her features sharp, her markings glowing. With quiet power, every worker in the bay stared in shock. They had thought she was just a quiet laborer. Now they saw something far greater. Daniel's chest tightened. He finally understood why she hid. She wasn't just different. She was dangerous to reveal. The officers raised their weapons. "By order of the Colony Council, you are under arrest." The girl's glowing eyes narrowed. Sparks burst around her as tools rattled on shelves and lights flickered above. The workers stumbled back in fear. Some shouted, some whispered, none dared move closer. Daniel acted without thinking. He stepped between the officers and the girl. "Stop," he shouted. "She hasn't hurt anyone." The officers sneered. "Step aside, human. She is not registered. She is a threat." But Daniel did not move. His legs shook, but his resolve was firm. He looked back at her, seeing not a stranger but someone who had hidden her truth because the world was too dangerous to accept it. Her voice was low but powerful. "I told you curiosity was dangerous." Daniel met her gaze. "Then let me share that danger." The officers grew impatient. "Move now or you'll be charged as well." The girl lifted her hands slowly, glowing brighter. The machines around them began to hum as if alive. Sparks rained from overhead lights. A wave of energy surged. Through the bay, knocking the scanners out of the officers' hands, they stumbled, shouting in alarm. The workers scattered in chaos. Some ran, others fell to the ground, covering their heads. Daniel stood firm, the storm rushing around him. His heart pounded with awe and fear. When the surge ended, the bay was dark, only the glow from her skin lighting the room. The officers were on the floor, their weapons useless. She stood tall now, no longer hiding, her voice carried like a command. "I am not your worker. I am not your prisoner." Daniel stared at E. Her breathless, the words formed in his mind but not on his lips. "Then who are you?" She looked at him, eyes glowing brighter. "The one they hunt," she whispered. And with those words the truth began to unfold. She was no ordinary alien, no laborer, no refugee. She was something greater, something that carried power and danger. Far beyond the colony walls, Daniel knew then. His life would never be the same. He had stood at the edge of a secret, and now he had stepped fully inside. The repair bay still smelled of smoke and burning wires. The workers whispered in corners, afraid to even say her name. The officers had been carried out unconscious, their scanners destroyed, but no one dared step close to the hooded girl. No, not hooded anymore. She stood revealed, her glowing eyes and shimmering skin impossible to ignore. Daniel remained at her side. His hands were shaking, his mind spinning. He had stood up to officers for her. Now he wanted answers. The girl's chest rose and fell with slow, steady breaths, but her gaze carried centuries of weight. "Who are you?" Daniel asked softly. His voice was steady, but inside he was trembling. Her silver blue eyes turned to him. The glow dimmed slightly, as if she was deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Leora." The name felt heavy, like it carried stories of battles and kingdoms. Daniel frowned. That doesn't explain why the whole bay just shook like a storm. Leora lowered her head. Her hands glowed faintly as she flexed her fingers. "Because I am not a worker. I never was. I am the last living heir of the Valari dynasty." The words hit Daniel like a hammer. He had heard the name before, everyone had. The Valari were once rulers of an empire that stretched across systems. But 10 years ago, their empire collapsed after an assassination wiped out their ruling family. At least that was what history claimed. "You're saying you're royalty?" Daniel whispered. "You're the princess they said was dead." Leora's lips tightened. "Dead is safer than hunted." Daniel's eyes widened. He finally understood the meaning of her hood, her silence, her fear of being scanned. She wasn't just hiding from colony guards. She was hiding from assassins, bounty hunters, maybe entire fleets. She looked at him again, her voice trembling with hidden pain. "They killed my family. They destroyed our home. And they hunt me still. If they find me, they will finish what they started." Daniel's throat felt dry. He wanted to speak, but words caught. He had thought she was a strange worker with a secret. But now he realized he stood beside the only living royal of a fallen dynasty. The fate of her people rested on her survival. The workers who hadn't fled now stared from a distance. Some whispered, "Valari." Others muttered, "Dangerous." Fear and awe filled the air. None dared come close. Daniel felt anger rising inside him. "And you were here pretending to haul crates," he said, shaking his head, "hiding like some fugitive?" Her glowing eyes hardened. "Because I am a fugitive," she said, her voice sharp. "Do you think I wanted this? To pretend, to hide, to live like a shadow?" But survival does not care for pride. Daniel's chest tightened. He saw the pain beneath her strength. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. She was right. Hiding had kept her alive before he could. Respond, alarms echoed through the colony. A voice boomed over the speakers. Unregistered power surge detected, security teams deployed. Leora's face went pale. She clenched her fists. They know now. It is too late to hide. Daniel grabbed her arm. Then we run. Her glowing eyes met his. You don't understand. If I leave, they will follow. They always follow. Then let them, Daniel said, his voice hard. You don't have to fight them alone. Leora looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing the worth of a single human engineer against the storm of enemies chasing her. Finally, her shoulders eased slightly. She gave a small nod. You are reckless, she whispered. But maybe I need reckless. They slipped into the tunnels before the guards arrived. The colony echoed with boots and shouts. Security spread in every direction. Daniel led her through hidden passages he had used during late-night repairs. She moved silently beside him, her glow dimmed to hide her presence. When they reached an abandoned control room, Daniel closed the door and leaned against it, catching his breath. So what now? He asked. Leora's eyes flickered. Now, I decide if I keep running or if I rise again. Daniel frowned. Rise again? She stepped forward, her markings glowing brighter. Her voice carried power now, the voice of someone born to command. My family ruled with knowledge and strength. We gave order to systems drowning in chaos. They killed us because they feared us, but my blood still lives, and with it, the right to reclaim what was lost. Daniel stared at her, speechless. In her words, he heard not just a survivor, but a leader, a ruler hidden beneath rags. But before he could answer, the sound of engines rumbled above. Daniel looked through a cracked panel and saw ships landing on the far side of the colony. Not colony security, but black, sharp craft, painted with symbols he didn't recognize. His stomach dropped. He didn't need to ask. These were the hunters. Leora's face hardened. They found me, she whispered. Daniel's heart pounded. He realized he had crossed a line he could never step back from. He was no longer just an engineer. He was now tied to the fate of a hunted heir. And somewhere deep inside, he understood. This was only the beginning of a war far greater than the colony itself. Engines roared above the colony like thunder. The black ships descended through the dust-filled sky, sleek and sharp. Symbols painted across their hulls glowed faintly red. The sight alone sent fear racing through Daniel's chest. These were not traders or colony guards. They were hunters. Inside, the abandoned control room. Daniel pressed his ear against the wall. He could hear boots striking metal floors. Voices in a language he didn't know echoed through the tunnels. The hunters were already spreading out. Leora's silver blue eyes burned with quiet fury. She moved toward the cracked panel and looked at the ships outside. They found me faster than I thought, she whispered. Her markings glowed faintly, betraying her fear. These are syndicate hunters. They will not leave until I am taken or dead. Daniel clenched his fists. His heart screamed at him to run, to save himself. But another voice inside was louder now, the one that had made him stand in front of armed officers. He turned to her. Then we don't let them take you. Leora studied him, as if trying to understand why a human would risk everything for someone not even from his world. For a moment, her glowing eyes softened. Then she nodded. If you stay, you fight with me. Daniel swallowed hard but nodded back. Then let's fight smart. The tunnels shook as hunters moved closer. Daniel quickly scanned the room. He spotted broken wiring, loose panels, and old fuel canisters. His mind raced. We don't have weapons, he muttered. But we have tools. Leora tilted her head. Tools? Daniel grabbed a coil of wire. Yeah, I fix ships for a living. I know how to make problems for anyone who chases me. Within minutes, they set traps. Daniel laid wires across the floor and connected them to power cells. Leora charged them. With a flick of her glowing hands, the wires hummed faintly, hidden under shadows. He placed canisters in weak spots, ready to topple when hit. It wasn't much, but it was something. The first group of hunters entered, armored and armed with sleek rifles. Their helmets glowed red, scanning the room. The leader barked a command. In a harsh tongue, they advanced. Daniel crouched behind a console. His heart pounded in his ears. He glanced at Leora. She stood tall, calm, like someone who had faced death too many times before. The hunters stepped over the wires. The floor sparked. Energy surged through their boots. They shouted in shock as their systems overloaded. Armor plates crackled with electricity. One dropped his weapon. Another collapsed, twitching. "Now," Daniel shouted, kicking a fuel canister toward them. Leora lifted her glowing hand, and the canister burst with a flash. A wall of sparks and fire knocked the hunters back, filling the tunnel with smoke. The remaining hunters fired blindly. Bolts of energy seared the walls. Daniel ducked, feeling heat rush past his face. He grabbed a wrench and hurled it at a dangling pipe. The pipe burst, releasing a flood of steam that blinded their enemies. "Move!" Daniel yelled, pulling Leora by the arm. They slipped into a side passage as the hunters stumbled in confusion. The colony was chaos now. Sirens wailed, civilians screamed and scattered. Security forces tried to form lines, but the hunters cut through them with brutal efficiency. Daniel and Leora ran through maintenance shafts, climbing ladders, weaving through shadows. At one junction, Leora stopped, her glowing eyes narrowed. "They are tracking me," she said. "They can feel my energy. They will not stop." Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. "Then we give them too much to track." He grabbed a set of old power cores stacked in the corner. With Leora's help, they charged them until they hummed like miniature storms. Daniel tossed them into 3 different shafts. Let them chase ghosts. The plan worked. The hunters split up, following the false trails. Their boots echoed in different directions, buying Daniel and Leora precious time. They finally emerged in the outer colony yards. Dust whipped around them. The black ships loomed above, their lights scanning the ground. Like predators searching for prey, Daniel's lungs burned, but he kept running. "Where do we go?" he shouted. Leora's glowing eyes turned to the horizon. "There is a hidden beacon in the old mines. If I reach it, I can call for the Valari resistance. They are far, but they will hear." Daniel nodded. "Then the mines it is." But reaching them would not be easy. Hunters closed in. Their red lights cut through the dust. Daniel grabbed a discarded cable and rigged it to spark, tossing it at their feet. A shower of light blinded them for a moment, long enough for him and Leora to slip away. Every step felt like a race against death. Daniel's body screamed with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. Beside him, Leora glowed like a walking flame. Her markings burned brighter the closer the hunters came. Finally, the mouth of the mines appeared, dark and jagged. They rushed inside, shadows swallowing them. The sound of engines and hunters' shouts echoed behind. Inside the mine, Daniel leaned against the wall, gasping. His hands shook. "They won't stop, will they?" Leora shook her head, her glowing eyes fierce. "No, not until I am gone." Daniel looked at her, sweat dripping down his face. "Then we make sure you're not gone." For the first time since revealing herself, Leora gave a faint smile. "You are reckless, human," she whispered. "But I think I will need reckless if I am to survive this." Outside, the hunters regrouped. Their ships turned, scanning the mines with deadly intent. The pursuit was far from over. But for now, Daniel and Leora had a head start, and that was all they needed. The mines stretched into endless shadows. Old stone walls echoed with every step. Daniel's boots scraped against the ground as he followed Leora deeper inside. The air was thick with dust, but the silence was heavier than the air itself. Outside, the hunters searched, their voices echoing faintly through the tunnels. Daniel leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His body ached from the chase. His heart was still racing, but when he looked at Leora, she stood tall, glowing faintly, as if the darkness itself bowed to her presence. "We can't stay here forever," Daniel whispered. "I know," she replied, her glowing eyes searching the shadows. "But this mine holds more than stone, it holds a beacon." Daniel frowned. "Beacon?" She nodded, her voice steady. "My people built it long ago, before this colony was even founded. It is hidden deep in these tunnels. If I reach it, I can send a signal. The Valari resistance will hear me. They will come." Daniel's chest tightened. He thought about the word resistance. He had heard rumors of Valari survivors scattered across the stars, fighting in secret against the Syndicate, but he had never believed they were real. Now he was standing beside their heir. Leora's voice softened. "But to reach it, I will need your help." Daniel stared at her, sweat dripping down his face. "You want me to fight against the Syndicate? Against assassins who kill empires?" "You already have," she said simply. Her glowing markings shimmered as she looked at him. "You stood in front of armed officers. You set traps for hunters. You chose my side before I even asked." Daniel wanted to argue, but her words cut deep. She was right. He had chosen again and again. Still, his mind battled against the truth. If he stayed with her, he risked everything. His job, his life, maybe even the colony's safety. But if he left, her now she would fall, and if she fell, maybe the galaxy would lose its only chance to see the Valari rise again. "Why me?" Daniel finally asked, his voice rough. "I'm just an engineer. I fix ships. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a hero." Leora stepped closer. Her silver blue eyes glowed brighter in the shadows. "Because you see me," she whispered. "Not as a weapon, not as a title, but as a person. No one else has done that. Not since my family was alive." Her words struck him harder than any weapon. For a moment, the minds were silent except for the faint hum of her energy. Daniel swallowed hard. His choice was forming in his chest, even if his mind still resisted. Suddenly, voices echoed down the tunnels. The hunters were inside. Their boots struck the ground with precision. Daniel and Leora ducked behind a collapsed wall. Daniel's heart raced as red lights cut through the darkness. "They are close," Leora whispered. Her markings flared slightly. "If I unleash my full power, I can destroy them." Daniel grabbed her arm quickly. "And bring the whole mine down on us?" Her glowing eyes met his. He could see the struggle in her. She was born to fight, to command, but here, in this fragile tunnel, her power could kill them both. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with resolve. "No. We do this. My way. We don't win by being stronger, we win by being smarter." He quickly scanned the walls. His engineer's mind worked fast. "See those cracks? If we lure them under that support beam, we can drop the ceiling, block the tunnel." Leora tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You are reckless, but clever." They set the trap quickly. Daniel loosened the beam with his tools. Leora added a spark of energy to weaken the stone. Together they prepared the collapse. When the hunters appeared, their red light slicing through the dark, Daniel hurled a piece of metal across the tunnel. The noise drew them exactly where he wanted. As the hunters marched beneath the weakened beam, Leora raised her glowing hand. Energy surged into the cracks. The mine shook. The ceiling collapsed in a roar of stone and dust. The hunters shouted in alarm as tons of rock buried them. The tunnel sealed behind them. Daniel coughed, covering his mouth from the dust. Leora stood beside him, her glow lighting the shadows. For the first time, they were alone again. "You saved us," she whispered. Daniel gave a tired laugh. "You helped, don't forget that." But her eyes stayed locked on him. "No," she said firmly. "You made the choice. You could have left me, you could have run, but you didn't." Daniel's chest tightened again. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. His choice had been made the moment he stepped in front of the officers. Leora reached out, her glowing hand brushing his arm gently. "Then will you make another choice?" she asked softly. "Will you help me reach the beacon? Will you help me bring my people back from the shadows?" Daniel stared at her hand, glowing faintly against his skin. He thought of the colony, of the Syndicate, of the endless dangers. Then he thought of her, alone, hunted, carrying the weight of a lost throne. His answer came before he could stop. "Oh, yeah," he whispered, I'll help you." Leora's eyes softened, and for the first time, a real smile curved her lips. "Then together we will change everything." Far above, the hunters regrouped, their ships circling like predators. The choice had been made, the path was clear, and for Daniel, there was no turning back. The tunnel shook as distant explosions echoed through the stone. Daniel gritted his teeth, clutching his makeshift weapon. Dust and debris floated in the dim glow of Leora's markings. Their path to the beacon was narrow, but it was the only way to escape. The hunters, Leora moved ahead, her eyes scanning the walls. Every step she took left a faint trail of light illuminating cracks in the rocks. "We are close," she whispered, her voice tense. "Just beyond that bend is the chamber." Daniel nodded, trying to steady his breathing. His hands shook, but he would not show fear. Not now, not when everything depended on him. As they rounded the bend, the first hunters appeared, red lights slicing through the dust, their weapons raised, aimed directly at Daniel and Leora. "Stop right there," a voice commanded, cold and sharp. "You can't escape." Daniel glanced at Leora. She nodded slightly, her glow flaring brighter as if feeding on his courage. "We can't run," Daniel muttered. "We have to fight." He tightened his grip on a metal rod, its edges jagged but deadly. The hunters advanced, their boots echoing against the tunnel walls, each step like a drumbeat of impending doom. Leora's hands glowed as she prepared her energy. "I will hold them back," she said, her voice calm. "You reach the beacon." "No," Daniel said quickly. "We do this together." The hunters laughed, a hollow sound that bounced off the stone. "The little alien thinks she can shine against us," one of them sneered. "And the human will die trying." Daniel lunged first, swinging his rod. He struck a hunter across the shoulder. The man stumbled but recovered. Daniel rolled aside as blaster fire crackled through the air. Sparks flew. As energy bolts hit the walls, Leora unleashed a wave of glowing energy. The hunters staggered, thrown backward. Dust and rocks flew everywhere. The tunnel trembled with her power. Daniel seized the moment, sprinting toward a narrow side passage. "Leora, I found a way," he shouted. His voice barely audible over the chaos. Leora's glow intensified. "Hurry," she called back. She raised her hands again, sending another burst of energy at the approaching hunters. This time, several of them were thrown into, the walls groaning in pain. Daniel reached the side passage and saw the beacon. A small device embedded into the wall, faintly glowing. Symbols etched along its surface pulsed as if alive. He could feel its power, its promise. But before he could touch it, a hunter leaped in front of him. His weapon raised, aimed to strike. Daniel ducked just in time, swinging the rod. It connected with the hunter's arm, sending him staggering back. Leora appeared behind Daniel, her energy crackling. She reached forward, touching the hunter with a glowing hand. He screamed as a wave of energy immobilized him. His weapon clattered to the floor. Daniel finally reached the beacon, pressing his hands against the symbols. The Obao device pulsed brighter, filling the tunnel with a radiant light. He felt a rush of energy flow through him, connecting him to Leora. "Now!" Leora shouted, unleashing her full power. The hunters screamed as beams of glowing energy shot from her hands. The walls trembled, cracks forming across the ceiling. Daniel and Leora ran toward the beacon chamber. Just as the ceiling began to collapse, rocks tumbled, blocking the hunters' path. The last of them vanished beneath the rubble, their screams fading into silence. The beacon's glow enveloped them, warm and powerful. Daniel felt a strange calm, as if the device itself was reassuring him. Leora stood beside him, her energy settling, her eyes glowing softly. "We did it," she whispered. "The signal is sent." Daniel smiled faintly, exhausted but alive. "Who will come?" he asked, looking at the pulsing light. "Help is on the way," Leora replied. "My people will hear the signal. The Valari resistance will rise, and the Syndicate will finally face justice." For the first time, Daniel felt hope. Not just for himself, but for the galaxy. The darkness that had seemed endless now felt fragile, breakable. He had fought, he had chosen, and he had survived. Leora turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. "And you," she said softly, "you are no longer just an engineer. You are my partner, my ally, my friend." Daniel laughed, tired but happy. "I guess I'm more than I thought." The beacon flared one last time, sending waves of light up through the tunnels, reaching far beyond the colony, beyond the stars, calling the hidden resistance to rise. Daniel and Leora stood together, exhausted, but unbroken, their bond forged in battle. Their courage tested, the choice had been made, the final stand had been won, and now a new chapter began. The mines were silent, except for the faint hum of the beacon. And in that quiet, Daniel finally realized something. The galaxy was bigger than fear, bigger than danger, bigger than the Syndicate. And with allies like Leora, maybe, just maybe, it could be saved.